I see more and more news stories and articles out there talking about the advantages of renting versus buying a home. Now, I understand that everybody has a right to their own opinion, but I can't help but think that these news stories are a little biased. Now, I've owned rental properties and I've helped lots of investors buy rental properties, but the whole landlord-tenant model breaks down if there aren't enough qualified tenants. If that house sits vacant, there is no rental income. I believe these news stories that say buying a home is a bad investment are carefully crafted to keep potential home buyers, especially the younger ones, renting much longer than they need to. Now, full disclosure, I am a real estate agent, so I get paid when I help someone either buy or sell a property. Now, you could interpret that as a bias, but nobody is going to hire me unless I can provide accurate information to help them make better decisions. Now, in an attempt to do that, I'd like to point out some of the flaws in the argument that you're better off renting versus buying, especially in a market like we're in now. And if you stick around with this video, I'm going to tell you all about it. Now, this is the type of article I'm talking about. This financial advisor clearly states that buying a home is not a good investment and that you're better off renting. He says this because of the costs associated with owning a home. Property taxes are never going to go away, and you will have things like maintenance and repairs. The figures he uses assumes that you have $5,000 a month available for housing. First of all, let's talk about the 40% rule. Most mortgage companies will want to see all your debt payments, house, car, credit cards, student loans, etc., be no more than 40% of your gross monthly household income. So assuming you had no other debts, $5,000 available for a mortgage means you have a household income of around $150,000 a year. Assuming your credit is okay, that kind of household income could easily qualify you to buy a house almost anywhere in the Austin metro, even with the recent price run-ups. And there are a lot of households out there with that kind of monthly income who are still renting. Now, it's a personal choice, and there's really nothing wrong with it. But at least for the length of this video, let's explore some other options. In the article I referenced earlier, the financial advisor proposed that instead of spending $5,000 a month to buy a house, you would be better off renting a house for $2,500 a month and investing the other $2,500, I assume with him, in some type of equities. He says that at the end of 30 years, assuming a 7% return every year, you would have more in the investment account than you would in equity in the home. Let's see if that's true. If you invested $2,500 a month, every month for 30 years, and were able to maintain a 7% return every year, at the end of 30 years, you would have a little over $3 million. But if you wanted to spend that money, you would need to pay capital gains tax. Over the course of those 30 years, you would have deposited $900,000, which would be your cost basis. If you take the final value minus your cost basis, you would have a little more than $2.1 million in capital gains. Well, let's say the capital gains rate stays at 25%. That means you would owe $500,000 in taxes, which would leave you almost $2.5 million after taxes. Now, on the purchase side, let's figure out how much house you could afford. At current interest rates, a loan for $600,000 would give you a payment around $3,000 a month, which would leave you a little more than $2,000 a month for property taxes, HOA fees, insurance, and any maintenance and repairs. You would be paying nearly $3,000 a month to pay down the loan balance. But a portion of that payment would be interest. And of course, the higher the interest rate, the more you would pay in interest over the term of the loan. One thing this financial advisor doesn't talk about is what if you bought a brand new house? You're still going to have the property taxes, HOA fees, and insurance, but you would have $0 going towards maintenance and repairs for at least 5, maybe as long as 10 years. If you didn't need to spend any of the money on maintenance and repairs, that extra could be diverted into either paying down the loan balance or investing in something else. But let's not complicate it. Let's say you stay in the same house for 30 years and pay off your mortgage. Can we expect the value of that house to be higher in 30 years? Based on history, yes. These statistics are provided by Neighborhood Scout for the state of Texas. In the last year, the average annual appreciation rate was nearly 20%. Now, over the last 20 years, though, it was just shy of 5%. Let's use that for our calculations. If you start with a $600,000 house and see a 5% appreciation for 30 years, your house will be worth $2.5 million in 30 years. And since your loan is paid off, that would be total equity. But what about capital gains? The ending value is $2.5 million and your cost basis is $600,000. So your total capital gains is just shy of $2 million. Now here's one of the tax advantages of home ownership. If it's your primary residence, the first $250,000 in capital gains is untaxed. If you're married, it goes to $500,000. So let's assume you're married. That would reduce the capital gains to about $1.5 million, and at a 25% tax rate, your taxes would be $373,000, which would leave you $2.2 million after taxes. That's a difference of about $300,000. So in theory, the financial advisor is right. But I would challenge you to think about some of the variables that could impact those final values after 30 years. Let's start with an option that financial advisor didn't even talk about. What if instead of renting for $2,500 a month, you bought a less expensive house? At current interest rates, a $400,000 loan would give you a payment of about $2,500 a month. Now, just like the rental example, you would have that other $2,500 available, which could be allocated for taxes and other expenses. Anything left over could be invested. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you bought a new house, your maintenance and repair costs would be zero for the first several years. So you should be able to build up a sizable amount of reserves for any unexpected repairs or maintenance as that house ages. Let's say you're able to average half of that $2,500 in expenses. So the other half would be available for investing. Your average monthly deposit to the investment account would be $1,250. After 30 years, your investment account would be worth $1.5 million, and your paid off house would be worth $1.7 million. Your total capital gains after deducting the cost basis and taking the primary residence exemption would be almost $1.9 million, and your taxes due would be $473,000, which means after taxes, you would have $2.7 million, almost $2.8 million. Compare this to the $2,500 rent investment split, you would have $2.5 million, and the $600,000 home purchase, you'd have $2.2 million. Now another thing to consider is because of the capital gains tax savings on a primary residence, you could strategically move more often to realize that gain and then reinvest those untaxed capital gains into another house. You can do this as quickly as every 2 years, and with the right planning, you could even do it for a second home. The current rule is if you sell the house, you must have lived in it for 2 of the previous 5 years. And just like anything regarding financial and tax planning, if you understand the rules, it becomes easier to structure your transactions to maximize the benefits to you. Now, the other huge variable in all of this is the average rate of growth or appreciation. Now, it's possible for someone who knows what they're doing to hit that 7% annual return in the stock market, but they're likely going to need to buy and sell to do it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that same approach can be used on the real estate side. And if you're able to maximize those capital gains exemptions, you could do much better than the 5% we use in this example. Many people think of their house as an expense, much like this financial advisor. All of us need some place to live, and we do that by either paying a mortgage payment or paying a rent payment to someone who's going to use that money to pay their mortgage. If you buy a house, you do gain a sense of stability. Most people buy their first house because they're starting a family. And there are a lot of people who stay in the same house for their entire lives. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of that. But if we're going to compare owning a house to other investment options, it's imperative that we begin thinking about that house as an investment and using all of the tax advantages available to maximize the return on that investment. I get emails, texts, and phone calls almost every day from people who are thinking about buying or selling real estate here in the Austin area, and I'd love to help you out too. If you like this video, you should check out this other one that I did. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. All of my contact information is in the video description, so don't be shy. Let's make your real estate dream come true.